can see already how well you've done. All right, look at how many people are now getting a B. And you've still got 2 years before you finish your chances of sitting your exam. OK, so well done today. Round of applause. Let's go, American. Excellent.
You're measuring height and arm spans at the back there. Heights are in the middle. Once you've done your measurements, stuck them on there, you can sit back down and carry on. It's challenging because you've obviously got a lot of kids to work with, and you've got to make sure that they can access the work at all levels. But at the end of the day, it's also rewarding because to see what they come out with at the end of it is absolutely superb. We've got some kids in here who have already got a grade C in the GCSE that were targeted less than that.
6'3". Don't mess with that.
Look, watch the air, people.
182.
182?
Yeah.
So you're just under 6 foot?
Critics will say that the brightest pupils being taught by the best teachers is almost bound to improve results. But the senior management team at Sydney Smith point out that the school is now out of special measures and the results continue to improve. The head teacher sees no reason why the double class experiment should not be extended to subjects other than maths and English.
The impact so far has been very good. Initially, we had a number of concerns from some parents who were worried about students being lost in the big group, but the evidence is showing that they're actually getting more attention because, as well as the outstanding teacher, we've managed to get 2 or 3 support staff in as well, and so it means the adult-student ratio is actually better than if it was in a normal classroom. Also, the results are showing that there's been big improvements, and in both maths and in English, the students that have been taught by the good or outstanding teachers, they've shown better progress. To my mind, there's no reason why you couldn't do it in any of the academic subjects such as history, geography, all those sorts of subjects. Anything practical-based, design technology, science, it would be more difficult, I would think, but I see no reason why other subjects shouldn't be part of having larger class sizes.
What makes a good story? You all know the answers to this, so really, really quickly, recap, let's go. What makes a good story? Ryan?
Lots of adjectives.
Lots of adjectives, brilliant. Kellyanne?
Make it your own.
Make it your own, OK, so make it original. Luke?
Plan it.
Plan it, absolutely. If you don't plan it, you don't get structure.
At Sydney Smith, they took a low-tech approach to increasing class sizes by simply knocking down walls. At the new academies, huge classrooms are designed into the buildings. At John Cabot Academy in Bristol, they've just built a classroom which is able to accommodate 160 pupils.
2 years ago we became an academy, and in that time we had the opportunity then through some extra funding to build a new building, so we built a new building. And our aspiration then was to comfortably be able to house in one place, on one level, around 80 students. So therefore now we do teach students 80 at a time. Similarly, in the downstairs of that area, we can house 80 in an assembly style arrangement. Actually speaking, we can house 160 in there, but it's a bit tighter at that point. The real positive in that situation is that it's personalised learning, but it's happening by using space. And so if a student's ready to move on, and they're ready to move on, and if that means you need to go to a different area, either to access a different piece of machinery or equipment or computer or a different member of staff, any resource, we don't want the way that we've organised space and put walls up to be a barrier to that progress.
In this year's 7 class, 80 students are led by 3 teachers and 4 other adults.
You should all have a playing card in your hand. You need not to lose your playing cards for today. If you haven't got one, put your hand up. Fantastic. Our competency focus for this week is teamwork. And today is your last lesson on Project 1. So this is your last time to collect some evidence to show us that you're getting better at teamwork.
I become much more of a facilitator. And the intention is that with the flexible space, rather than just having 3 different activities that the students can take part in, which would happen in the traditional model with 3 classrooms, there could be 5 or 6 different activities going on here. So there can be small groups working together in the breakout rooms. There could be a large group having a seminar with a member of staff, maybe about one aspect of Bristol. There could be a small group working with a teacher, recording a radio programme, but that teacher's then got oversight of another 20 students who are working independently on the computers. So the sole intention was personalisation and allowing the students to develop as independent learners.
Right, guys, you need to decide at least 4 things, okay, and then you're going to vote on them. We all need to listen to one another's idea. This is what effective teamwork is, okay? Then you can come up with the idea.
I think it's better to be in a bigger class because then you can make more friends.
I'll tell you when, alright?
Yeah, but Connor, hold it to your mouth. Thank you.
Go.
Hello and welcome to Heart. Tonight our top stories are all about Bristol.
I like the smaller class, really, because it's more quiet and more peaceful and you don't get much distraction. Upstairs, right, is some big and you've got like one class talking and the other class talking, and if you're closest to like the other class you're getting like a bit of information from both sides, so you're getting a bit like from the other side and a bit from the other. It's like a bit confusing sometimes.
The most popular schools in Bristol that many people should know of are John Cabot Academy, Mangotsfield and Downend. Back over to Connor.
Thank you, Ben. Now, the most weirdest news ever about Bristol.
Cue, music.
It takes time for the students to get used to it, but it takes time and skill for the teachers to get used to it. We have tried with some of our very skilled teachers to bring them over here, and they've tried to bring their style of teaching into this big open plan space, and it hasn't necessarily worked. You get used as a teacher to having your specific group of students that you're responsible for, and all of a sudden now we're sharing students. You have to let go of some of the control of your classroom, and you have to be prepared to work together with other colleagues who might have different ways of controlling noise and they might have different tolerances.
Just put your hand up and tell me, what was the little story that I read to you halfway through this morning? Who were the 4 characters in that story? George?
Everybody, somebody, nobody, and...
Last one begins with A.
Anybody.
Good, excellent.
If over a period of time it starts to save money, that's got to be good, because I'll reuse that money. But the notion of saving money implies it just goes into somebody's pocket, and that's not how it works. So if we are funded less, I have less to use, I have a way that I can possibly get through that period. But it's never about, that's great, we've just saved £50,000, so now we'll all have treats for the year. The drive is to improve teaching and learning.
If you plan well, this model of teaching could reduce your workload. I could teach the same lesson for 3 weeks on a carousel because I'm teaching 3 different groups of students. We've had to find a creative model for assessing, so we don't use bookmarking traditionally a lot. We have lots of self-assessment and peer assessment. If you think about the teaching experience is made so much better by working with other colleagues. All of the positive benefits and the buzz you get from that makes for a more creative way then of working. Rather than worrying about workload, we actually have to tell people to spend less time, staying up late at night planning exciting things because they get so enthusiastic about making their practice better.
It's a very different way of teaching, but still relatively rare. What isn't rare, however, are reports of stress amongst teachers. That leads to difficulties in recruitment and retention, and the most common factor cited by teachers leaving state education for the private sector is the attractiveness of the smaller class sizes they find there. Sue Meadows made the move.
The big question this morning. We looked at the 5 Ps last week. Can anybody remember what they were? Your hand will help you. Oh, lots of hands up, good. A major factor of my decision-making process for coming back into the independent sector was the fact that it is possible, I think, to perhaps engage a lot more with the students on a more individual basis when you have much smaller class sizes. So, for example, one of the state schools that I taught in, I had a top set GCSE class with 37 students in, and now I have a top set Year 10 GCSE class with 17 students in, and that has to have an impact on the amount of time I can spend with each individual student, the amount of time and energy I can put into working on their coursework with them, into marking their work and giving very structured individual feedback. So it really makes a huge difference. So, if there's nouns with adjectives, what does that make it?
Expanded noun.
Brilliant, well done. You didn't say that very confidently, but you were absolutely right. Well done. If you're a good teacher, yes, you can teach a large class, but We don't always do things because we can. We do things because we want to. And in terms of day in, day out enjoyment of the job, which 10 years in is a pretty important factor, because I plan to be doing this kind of job for the rest of my professional career because I love it. Can anybody think of a more exciting word than big?
Enormous.
Enormous, that's
Gigantic.
good. Gigantic, fantastic. These are miles better, aren't they? It's not just a question of proving to oneself that one can do all of these different things. It's doing what you enjoy, what you know is making a really huge positive difference to the students.
And the idea of a smaller class, or at least not one numbering 60 or 80, as a community, which is more beneficial to its members, is reflected in the research.
There is a bit of a current of view that there is something particularly important about the size of the class. And although you might think if you sort of double up the class and have twice as many staff, so the pupil-teacher ratios, if you like, are comparable to having, say, 30 in a class and one teacher. Particularly some American research, particularly with the youngest children, suggests that the smaller class generates a certain kind of community which would be completely absent if you had 60 in a class with 2 teachers.
We, as a school, enjoy and promote the fact that we've got small classes. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to combine classes, which then make them slightly larger. Now, the challenge for us as a school is to do with how we can actually manage the small classes with the budgetary constraints that gives us. Now, the challenge is also staffing it, because, as I've asked the staff so many times, would you rather have a big class and lots of teaching assistants, or a small class with fewer teaching assistants? The teachers have always come back saying they'd rather have a small class and fewer teaching assistants.
We are in a tough area. Hull itself is a tough area, and West Hull is no different to that. But we have made it work, and I think that this could work in all parts of the country, provided you've got the staff who are passionate enough to make it work and the teachers who are good enough quality.
If we stand still, we've actually gone backwards. So this is about us realising that the world that the young people are going into has changing needs, and we need to make sure that our schools are not in a different age, but when they come into schools, we aren't just keeping up, we're actually leading the way.
So, does class size matter? The answer is a resounding yes. In the early years, smaller is better and very popular with teachers and parents. Later on, the findings are less clear. But the bigger question is perhaps how manipulating class sizes and teaching groups can lead to improvement in our schools.
So the important question is not, does class size matter? The question is it the smartest thing we could do with the money and our attention? And the answer is overwhelmingly no. There are better things we can do with the money than reduce class size, and it's time we started trying to do them.
I mean, my view about class size reduction is that it can be a very valuable tool as long as we also engage in what are the best ways of teaching in different sizes of classes for different kind of purposes, for different subjects. If we just, as it were, reduce class sizes across the board and expect good things to follow, it ain't going to happen.